What's going on, everybody? Kim Becker and Drew Priestman here with your weekly AMA for the Colorado Rockies. Spring training is underway. The Rockies are 3-2 in their 5 games down in Scottsdale. Drew, how you feeling about that so far?
Honestly, it's funny because I feel like I started all this series of our conversations by saying Demon going to be any good this year and bumming everybody out, right?
Yes.
And the spring training, now we're going to get to a little bit of potentially devastating news in a minute. But other than that, everything that's happened on the baseball diamond has been incredibly encouraging.
Okay.
The young guys are playing well. No one's really come out and just eaten it right away. It's just kind of like the vibes are good. Now it's spring, so it's easy for the vibes to be good, but they're good. So that's
also
nice.
Down in Arizona, Scottsdale, their vibes are always good, especially in March. The weather is pristine, but you did mention some potentially devastating news here. What is the latest on Brendan Rodgers, and how serious do you think this injury is going to be?
Yeah, this is one of those tough ones because as we're recording right now, we don't have the official doctor's notice, but what we have is not good. It doesn't sound good. At first, we had heard, kind of popped his shoulder out, had to pop it back in. There was hope of like, that happens. It's not pleasant, I wouldn't think. But it happens, right? And now we're hearing it may require surgery, and that could cost him his season, according to Thomas Harding. That is devastating, more for Rodgers and for the long term of this team, honestly. Like I've said, this is going to be a growing year, a learning year. It was going to be tough for them to contend. What you wanted was to be building toward the future. And one of those big building blocks was supposed to be, and looked like it was going to be, Brendan Rodgers. You start to worry now if this is very serious about another kind of David Dahl situation where you've got a player with all-star talent, clearly all-star talent, but the injuries just keep getting him. And none of them are related. They're all freak accidents. It's not like he's got a lingering thing.
Yeah.
But this is devastating, mostly for Rodgers, because this should have been the year that he could finally put all that behind him, take that next step, and really make himself a known player in Major League Baseball. And unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be. I just hope I am hoping for the best at this point, as everyone should be. Missing the season, in any other year, we'd be sitting here talking about how many games is this going to cost the Rockies. If they were trying to be competitive, I'm not worried about that at this point. If it takes them from a 68 win team to a 64 win team, whatever. But for the long-term benefit of the club, you've got to hope that Rodgers can get through this, can get past this, can find the best version of himself someday, because it would be absolutely brutal if another first-round pick who had an incredible minor league career and showed so much promise in the majors ended up just kind of fizzling out, very much the way David Dahl did. And you hope for anything but that.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, definitely not the news you want to hear, especially out of spring training before everything really gets going. That's always the worst. Spring training, preseason, any other sport, it's just the one thing you don't want to happen. So quite a bummer that we're talking about it this early on. But there are some other positives, like you said, some encouraging things going on. I guess we'll still kind of stay on the Rodgers topic, though, here, because we did have one more question. He said, who takes over for Rodgers with the injury news coming out this morning, though? Is it Trejo?
This is a great question, and I don't know that there's an easy or simple answer to it.
Okay.
Trejo would be the guy who's next on the depth chart at the position, right? So that's the obvious first thing to go. And Trejo slides in, plays second base. I don't think Trejo's a natural shortstop, and he's pretty good over there. You want Tovar locked in at shortstop as long as you can, though. You want that guy to be your future at that position. So putting Trejo in at second base gives you a guy who's a very solid defender. The ceiling for the bat is never one I've been excited about, but he's grown in the last couple of years. And maybe you see and you roll forward with it. What I would do, though, because there's one maybe silver lining to this, which is that the Rockies, believe it or not, actually have a glut at one position, corner power hitter guy, right? If that's a position, that's a technical position, by the way, for those of you that don't know. In other words, as when Rodgers was healthy, Alaudris Montero didn't have anywhere to play, and as a player whose bat has shown he needs to get in the lineup. But with Blackmon at DH and Crone at first base and McMahon locked in at third base, there's really no way to get him regular at bats. They were going to have to mix and match, get him in when they can, whatever. If Rodgers goes down, what I would do is slide McMahon over to second base, where he's already shown he can play Gold Glove caliber defense, and then you just have him hopefully continue to grow offensively. And you make Montero, who's not the best defender in the world, again, he plays hitter guy position. You put him in at third base. And this gives all of your young players the opportunity to play. And so while Trejo might be the safer option, again, this year shouldn't be about, trying to lose as few games as possible.
Yeah.
This year should be about, can Montero become a part of that core? Can Michael Toglia become a part of that core? And some of these other guys who have shown out early in spring training that I think we're going to talk about in a minute. So it could be Trejo. I love Alan Trejo, but that quite frankly is the boring decision. If you want to take this and get any kind of good you can out of it, it's going to be more at-bats for guys like Toglia, Montero, Sean Bouchard, and Brendan Doyle.
Okay. All right. We've got some answers here now. This next question, I know it's only spring training and probably doesn't mean much, but Chris Bryant seems to be pretty dialed in at the plate. How well does this translate to potential early regular season success?
Well, the second part is always difficult, but I will say that, like we were just saying, you don't want injuries, right? Number one thing you don't want this time of year is to be hurt. Chris Bryant spent basically all of last year hurt. And so number one, he's on the diamond. Huge win to begin with. Excellent plus. You like to see Chris Bryant actually in the batter's box.
Yeah.
What he does. But then, I wouldn't have been too concerned if he'd come out, say, struck out in his first 7 at bats. It's spring training, and you can't run too far with positive or negative analysis. Right. But Chris Bryant has hit 2 balls about 450 feet apiece. Absolute concourse shots. And it is nice to remember, oh, yeah, this guy at his best is literally one of the best hitters in all of baseball and was for the better part of a decade. He's got an MVP and a World Series championship on his mantle. This guy is quite good. And Rockies fans got to see hardly any of his good, especially from a home run standpoint. When he got out there last year, usually he was hitting. He was never terrible, but the home runs weren't there. Mm. And so it's natural to start to wonder. He's only 31 years old and he's nowhere near as injury prone as people think. But I do think there was starting to be a narrative out there of, is this guy losing it a bit? Can he even do it anymore? Now we know he can still do it. The second part of the question remains open. Will it translate to the regular season? I think if he's healthy, Chris Bryant will remain one of the best hitters in all of baseball. And Rockies fans are going to be excited if he gets to be in the lineup.
Yeah, I think Rockies fans would be excited if anyone potentially good is in the lineup. I think we're looking for any kind of thing that we can really root for, especially if they're wearing that Rockies jersey. So absolutely agree with you on that one. Some exciting things. Now we'll roll on here. You mentioned that you were impressed with Brendan Doyle. What do you like about his game? And is there any chance we see him with the big league club this season?
Yes. And I think we almost certainly will. I think I think he has a chance to win the opening day starting center fielder job. And I didn't necessarily think that a week and a half ago.
Wow.
And I had Brendan on the show last year. Like, check out the Mile High Sports podcast. Like, I'm not unfamiliar with his game and with his profile, but he's really grown in the last couple of years. Incredibly athletic, very fast, center field guy, can play great defense, and he has pop. Hit like 26 home runs throughout now in the minor leagues, but still, 26 home runs in a season for a guy who's known more as an athletic, toolsy, defensive, speedy center fielder. You start getting excited. The guy's touting himself, but on the show with me, he referred to himself as a 5-tool player. And that's how he sees himself, that he can hit for the power, he can run, he can be a defender and all of these things. And so now ultimately you still got to prove you can hit major league pitching. Like there's no practicing for a 92-mile-an-hour slider or Clayton Kershaw's curveball or Zach Greinke's changeup. They don't have those in the minors. And so like with every baseball player or every position player, at least throughout the history of this game, the tell will be whether or not he can hit. right? You got to make enough contact at the big leagues. There's still some questions about whether or not that skill will come up. But in a year like this, again, where you're trying guys out, give Brendan Doyle a shot. The Rockies have made it clear early on with how much he's playing that they're very curious about what he can do. And also with the comments that they've made. Jonathan Daza was fine for most of last year in center, but he's hit a grand total of 3 home runs, I think, in his career, over several hundred at bats now. So you're not getting any pop there. It's maybe a little bit pie in the sky, but I think Brendan Doyle is a guy who could very quietly suddenly become a fan favorite. He was never a top prospect. He's never a top 100 guy, not even a top 10 or 20 Rockies prospect often. But at some point, results show out. Yeah. We're in the business of results, right? And if he has a good spring training, I think he'll at least be there as a 4th outfielder guy. If he has a great spring training, I could see them saying, challenge him, see what he's got. Maybe he's the guy.
Hey, that's fantastic. That's awesome. Okay, let's talk about a couple other guys here. What are your first impressions of Zach Veen and Drew Romo?
This is what we were talking about at the beginning. Again, if you like I said, on the opposite end of the spectrum of what you don't want is to hear about injuries, the most positive thing, the best case scenario for good news for Rockies fans out of this spring training was going to be good performances from these players.
Nice.
And that's what we're getting. Not just like, oh, hey, they're hanging in. Zach Veen's first at bat rips a double off the wall, steals a base. Next at bat, yonkers. This guy's first time seeing major league pitching, and it just take him deep. Next game, double, 2 stolen bases. The guy had over 90 stolen bases over 2 seasons of minor league baseball, and he's known as being a power defender. Talk about 5 tools. Zach Veen, there's no level of hype that is too high for Zach Veen right now. And I would say the same thing about Drew Romo. And this is on me. Maybe I'm downplaying him because fellow Drews. You got to be skeptical of those people. But again, man, a switch hitting catcher who can steal bases and hit home runs, who was apparently major league caliber defensively when the Rockies drafted him. The only question about Drew Romo has been, like I was talking earlier about Doyle and about thousands of players that have come before them, will they make enough contact? Will he hit? The answer so far for Drew Romo at every level of the minors and now in spring training has been, yep. And if so, now he's a little further off. Catchers are long-term projects, especially high school catchers, that very rarely pan out. But there's very few best case scenarios in baseball that are better than having a catcher who's a plus defensively and a plus offensively. There's only a handful of teams in the sport that have that. Mm-hmm. And Romo has the opportunity to be one of those guys for the Rockies. And not just, hey, he doesn't kill you on defense, he doesn't kill you on, like a guy who can be a major asset, like a 5 to 6 win player for those of you that are into wins above replacement regularly. Now, of course, I'm talking ceiling potential. He's a child who has to work his way up through Double-A.
That's great, though. Yeah, it's awesome.
But a lot of times these guys show up at their first spring training and they look intimidated. I would be. Like I said, they don't have Clayton Kershaw and Justin Verlander and Zach Greinke in the minors. There's no way to prepare for that. And you get in the box and you see it and you don't back down. And not only that, but you're hitting bombs, you're stealing bases, you're out there playing like you own this game.
Yeah.
Baseball America jumped the Rockies farm system from 27th to 14th. These guys are the reason why. There's other players too.
Okay.
This type of performance is why.
Okay, one more question here. Despite the small sample size that we've seen so far, what are your thoughts so far on the rule changes for this upcoming season, Drew?
Oh, man. Great question. I'll say I've got 2 different categories of thoughts. I have on-field thoughts, and I have pitch clock thoughts. And I know the pitch clock affects what's going on in the field, but I guess another way to say it is I have pitch clock, and then I have other. In terms of other, mostly overwhelmingly positive. Even if you didn't love the change in shifting rules or some of these other things, the base running stuff, whatever, how many times you can throw over. I think what we've seen already is that as far as those things go, they're not hurting anything, even if you don't love them. There's not a negative to be taken away there. right? I came around on the shift basically when the All-Star game came to Denver, and I saw Shohei Ohtani and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hitting 110-mile-an-hour line drives straight to where defenders were standing. And I was like, this isn't fun. Like, I want to see a defender make a play. I didn't come to the All-Star game to see how good a coach can pre-position his defense.
Right.
Right? Does anyone go to see a baseball game for that? So that stuff I'm all in favor of. I like more base hits. I love base running. I was a little of it. I was a speed guy back in my day. That was my favorite part of the game. I love stealing bases. Someone stole home on the Rock. The game ended, I think, on the guy stealing home. I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
Bring it back. That stuff's exciting. So all that stuff, even though there were times I'd been against it, and I understand certain arguments against them, all good. This pitch clock thing, we are in for a year, Kim. There's going to be thoughts and feelings. There are going to be ejections. There are going to be fights. And we were talking a little bit before we come on this, and I said, I've come around on the idea of the pitch clock. I used to be just pure baseball traditionalist. The games don't need to be shorter. If you got something else to do, don't watch baseball, right? It's a leisurely activity. That used to be me. And there's a part of me that still feels that way. But there's also a part of me that covers like 70 plus baseball games a year at home. And when they drag on for 4, 5, 6 hours, you like to see your family sometimes. Things like because there's also a game tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's not just that a 4.5 hour baseball game is a problem. So when the Boston Red Sox came to town and they played 3 consecutive 4.5 hour long baseball games, I thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
I love baseball. So yes, let's move it along a little bit. I hate looking at the thing. There's a countdown right back there. I'm like, what is this? How is and like mentally on the pitcher, the hurry, like baseball is not a game that's meant to be played in a rush, and you can see guys hurrying. So I think they should move it back 5 or 10 seconds or whatever. Like I said, the idea of, hey, get in the box, get on the mound, throw the ball is correct. And there's been egregious times throughout baseball history where you'll see pitchers just taking forever, stepping off the mound, bluffing. Let's play ball, right? But there's got to be a happy medium somewhere between what we had and now this, like, you've got 15 seconds, and if you haven't thrown the ball, it's a ball, and a game has already ended on this. We already had a bases loaded walk on a pitch that was not thrown. Now in spring training, people are going to laugh at that. The second that happens in a game that counts, like I said, just stay tuned. Watch this space. There are going to be fights.
Well, it's interesting, Drew, because like you said, when we first did this AMA, we talked about how maybe there's not a whole lot of things to be excited for this upcoming season when it comes to the Rockies. But talking to you more and more, I'm actually very excited to go to a game. I mean, the rule changes are one because I actually love seeing emotions and seeing athletes be passionate about what they're doing. And I love to see that. I mean, give me some of the emotions. Give me some of those feelings. I think it's going to be fantastic. And also just the positives out of spring training and, some guys that we can look forward to seeing out there for the Rockies. I'm pretty excited. The fact that it's spring and summer is right around the corner, I'm excited as well. So if nothing else, Drew, you've gotten me to be an excited Rockies fan for the upcoming season. So, not the injuries, obviously not excited about that. And hopefully we can hear more about Rodgers and what's going to go on with him. But the rest of it sounds pretty intriguing. I'm pretty thrilled.
Yeah, no, this is my big theme for the year. They won't be good, but they should be fun.
And that is where we'll cap this one. I love it, Drew. Well, thank you so much. And to everybody tuning in, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your questions. We will definitely have another one of these for the weeks to come, the many weeks and games to come for the Colorado Rockies, but spring training will keep going. How much longer do we have? How many more games do you know in spring training?
Oh, games off the top of my head, I don't know. We're wrapping this up end of March. I think the 28th is the last one. Then they're off to San Diego for some nice warm weather in the beginning of the 2023 baseball season.
An awesome opening day down in San Diego. That'll be a fun one. All right, Drew. Well, thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will do this again next Thursday.
Same. Bye.